Today would have been my mom's 74th birthday. As the youngest of her 9 children, I always made a big deal out of her birthday. Surprise parties, treating her at the salon, flowers, a bunch of balloons. I wanted to make her feel special because she was. She was my hero, my best friend, and the strongest person I've ever known. My mom was diagnosed with stage 2 colorectal cancer in September of 2022. I never could have imagined that in just 10 months, she would be gone. I can't celebrate with her the way I used to, but today I'm honoring her in a different way by sharing her story. March is dedicated to colorectal cancer awareness, which makes her birthday, April 1st, especially poignant. In its shadow, I'm choosing to pay tribute to a woman who always put everyone else first, even at the expense of her own health. This video is divided into 3 parts. The first shares my mom's journey. The second explains what colorectal cancer is and how it develops. And the third focuses on what research shows us we can do to reduce our risk. Some parts of this story are deeply personal and may be difficult to hear. And if I'm being honest, they were even harder to relive. If you'd prefer, you can skip ahead to the educational sections. But my hope is that by sharing both my mom's story and the science, more people will feel informed, empowered, and better equipped to protect their health. At the very least, I hope to pass on what I wish I had known when my mom was diagnosed. It all started in 2018. My mom was scheduled for what we thought was routine surgery.
Kind of worried about tomorrow. I'm freaking out over something that's quick and easy, very painless. By the grace of God, sound like mom. I just want her to be okay. That you're okay. And most importantly, here.
I don't know why I was so afraid. On some deeper level, it's like I knew it was more serious than anyone expected it to be. Shortly after surgery began, the receptionist came running out to tell my sister and me that the doctor had been looking for us. We were terrified. I mean, what could have possibly gone wrong? My heart sank as I imagined the possibilities. We sat in the waiting room for what felt like forever before the doctor showed up. He explained that what should have been a standard procedure had revealed a large tumor, one of the biggest he'd ever seen. I had no words, just the feeling of my heart being ripped out of my chest. He assured us he was able to remove the tumor and it was most likely benign, but we wouldn't know for sure until the biopsy results came back. We were just grateful that my mom made it through surgery and woke up. That week was torture. Waiting on pins and needles for a test to determine my mom's fate felt like hell. Then the biopsy results came back. The tumor tested benign, and we were on cloud 9. It felt like a huge weight lifted off our shoulders, like we dodged a bullet and the worst was over. The crisis had been averted, mom was alive and tumor-free, and we all went back to our regularly scheduled lives, just like that, without ever questioning why the tumor had formed in the first place. We never asked, and the doctors never explained. Their focus was on discovery and removal. Just glad we got that out when we did. Our relief kept us from asking. But even if we had, I'm not sure they would have had answers. I wish so badly I had the foresight then to dig deeper and learn what I know now. But when there aren't enough resources or support, when worry is overwhelming, you just hope for good news. Thinking about the future is a luxury you can't afford when the present feels so fragile. Over time, there were clues, bits and pieces along the way, hinting that my mom was unwell. In the summer of 2022, my mom had a colonoscopy. I remember being by her side when she regained consciousness. We got a call from the doctor who reviewed the biopsy and suggested an MRI. He said, "This is certainly suspicious for being a tumor, a cancer that recurred in the same spot. You're almost certainly going to need treatment." We just looked at each other in disbelief. We even said, what does that mean? We were in complete shock and denial and couldn't wrap our minds around what the doctor just said. 4 years after that tumor had been removed, the unthinkable happened. My mom was diagnosed with stage 2 colorectal cancer. Doctors urged her to start treatment immediately, but she was on the fence. And we had seen people undergo chemo and radiation and sadly pass away. My mom didn't want to suffer like that. She confided in me how badly she wished there was a more natural solution that didn't involve poisoning her body. That was the impetus for me and my partner Jared to start researching natural ways to help my mom heal. Unfortunately, death often motivates us more than life does. Stories emerged of people who naturally reversed colon cancer through diet alone. Real life examples that renewed our hope. We learned that medical schools teach about pharmaceutical drugs, not about the healing power of food. That doctors are rarely trained to explain how diet can prevent or slow disease. This knowledge gap meant we had to educate ourselves, but we discovered what proper nutrition really means. We increased our fiber, reduced processed foods, and whole food plant-based nutrition became our foundation. After the holidays, Mom and I went back to the doctor. She had more scans taken, which revealed the cancer had progressed from stage 2 to stage 3. We discussed treatments, but she didn't have the energy and confidence to make the decision. She was so scared that whatever choice she made would potentially end her life. She agonized about eating, became dependent on laxatives, and dreaded having bowel movements, leaving pools of blood each time. I lost count of the hours I stayed up late on the phone while she paced back and forth, restless and worried, contemplating what to do. All I could do was hold space, listen, and try to be there in whatever way she needed me to be. I never pushed her towards or away from conventional treatment, but I did share with her the healing power of plants and that foregoing treatment meant a radical transformation. One day, without telling anyone, my mom went to the treatment center alone and started radiation and chemotherapy. She was never sure she was doing the right thing, but she held on to her faith and took life one day at a time. The treatments were brutal. My mom, who was always strong and independent, was frail and needed a walker to get around. Her health declined rapidly. She was weak and cold all the time. She suffered third-degree burns on her sacrum from the radiation, tinnitus, significant hearing loss, common side effects of platinum and taxane-based chemotherapies. Despite her exhaustion, Mom was determined to finish treatment. On her final day of radiation, she rang the victory bell with tears streaming, raised arms in the air, thanking God, hugging every nurse before nearly collapsing in my arms in an embrace. It was a bittersweet triumph, a milestone in her cancer journey that I captured on video, and Mom must have played back 50 times or more with a big smile on her face. We thought the nightmare was over. But that moment was one of the last bright spots in her life. 3 months later, my mom died from complications of colorectal cancer. Conventional treatment did not prolong her life. It didn't improve the quality of her life. It just took her last breath. Colorectal cancer is now the leading cause of cancer death in the US for people under 50. Across all ages, it's the second leading cause of cancer-related death, claiming around 50,000 lives every year. About 1 in 20 people will be diagnosed in their lifetime. And the trend is getting worse. Compared to people born around 1950, when risk was at its lowest, people born in and after 1990 face twice the risk of colon cancer and 4 times the risk of rectal cancer. The good news is colorectal cancer is highly treatable when caught early. Even better news, it's the most preventable of all cancers with diet and lifestyle. The challenge? In its early stages, it rarely produces symptoms, making regular screening critical. Screening doesn't just detect cancer, it can stop it before it starts by finding and removing precancerous polyps. That's why in 2021, the recommended starting age for screening was lowered from 50 to 45 in response to rising rates among younger adults. Colorectal cancer doesn't happen overnight. Like most solid tumors, it develops slowly, often over decades. On average, rectal cancer takes 30 years, and cancers of the colon take 50 years to develop. In other words, you're not healthy one day and suddenly have cancer the next. You've had cancer silently growing in you over time. In fact, many of us have microscopic tumors or abnormal cells growing in our bodies right now. The difference is what happens next. While some people may go on to develop cancer, slowing tumor growth or keeping it dormant can help keep the disease under control. And in some cases, diet and lifestyle can even reverse its growth rather than letting it become life-threatening. Colorectal cancer can develop anywhere along the large intestine, from the beginning of the colon on the right side of the abdomen across the body, down the left side, and all the way to the rectum. No matter where it starts, it tends to follow the same slow step-by-step progression, which means we're given a critical window of time to detect it early and even prevent it altogether. Colorectal cancer develops in stages. It starts with a single cell undergoing an irreversible DNA change, cancer initiation, creating tiny clusters of abnormal cells in the colon lining. From there, polyps can form, small growths on the inner surface of the colon or rectum, which is potentially reversible. The final stage is when a benign polyp turns malignant, forming a cancerous tumor that can invade the colon wall and spread throughout the body. But if tumor growth isn't actively promoted, these early changes can stay undetected for years or even disappear, giving us a chance at preventing cancer before it becomes dangerous. Going back to 1980, researchers had already shown that high intake of calories, fat, protein, saturated fat, and cholesterol increased risk of colon and rectal cancer, with saturated fat showing the strongest link. Today, evidence consistently shows that eating red and processed meat significantly raises colorectal cancer risk. Countries that eat the most meat, like the US, have the highest rates of colon cancer, while nations with lower meat consumption see far fewer cases. High-fat diets increase bile acid production in the gut, feeding gut bacteria that produce toxic compounds. These compounds can damage colon cells, trigger DNA mutations, and promote inflammation, all of which boost cancer risk. Even modest meat consumption, particularly processed meats, can have a significant effect. For each slice of processed meat a day, you incrementally increase your risk by 40%. Like most Americans, my family grew up on lunch meat and cheese. My mom loved going to diners and having bacon and eggs for breakfast, and in recent years, she ate a lot of sub sandwiches. I don't think she realized the harm it was doing to her body. None of us did. Looking back, I can see now how her food choices contributed to her diagnosis. Colorectal cancer isn't just caused by what we eat, it's also caused by what we're not eating. Fiber, found only in plants like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes, is crucial for digestion and colon health. Unlike protein, fat, and carbs, which are mostly absorbed in the small intestine, fiber travels to the large intestine virtually unchanged. Because it isn't digested like other foods, its importance has often been underestimated. But in reality, fiber is actually one of our strongest defenses against colon cancer. Studies of more than 3 million people show a striking pattern. Plant-based diets are linked to far lower rates of digestive tract tumors, including colon and rectal cancers. As early as 1973, researchers found that bran and dietary fiber could slow the production of bile acids in the colon, while refined foods like white flour and sugar appeared to fuel them, suggesting that processed foods contribute to colorectal cancer. The risk of developing colorectal cancer can vary dramatically by as much as 8-fold, depending on what's on your plate. Diets rich in fiber from whole grains and vegetables and low in meat are linked to the lowest risk, while eating the opposite diet shows the highest risk. So it's not enough to just cut back on meat. You also need to eat more plants. As I mentioned before, colorectal cancer rarely produces symptoms in its early stages. That said, there are several warning signs. Think of them as check engine lights that can precede polyp growth and colorectal cancer. In his book, Don't Forget the Fiber, Dr. Dennis Burkett describes common diseases that are directly associated with a low-fiber diet, from bowel diseases like constipation, diverticulitis, and appendicitis, to diseases related to abdominal straining like hernia, varicose veins, and hemorrhoids, with constipation being the underlying symptom of them all. Constipation, straining, infrequent bowel movements, and small hard stool is the most common digestive complaint in the U.S., sending millions to the doctor every year. At its core, constipation is really a disease of nutrient deficiency, and that nutrient is fiber. Fewer than 5% of Americans get enough fiber, meaning most of us aren't eating enough whole plant foods, the only place fiber is found in abundance. Drinking water alone won't fix it. Without fiber, fluids just get absorbed and leave the body in urine. It's simple. The more plants you eat, the less likely you are to be constipated. For as long as I can remember, decades before her diagnosis, my mom struggled with a hernia, varicose veins, and hemorrhoids. Raised in a faith-based family that didn't believe in doctors, she learned to live with severe heartburn and indigestion after meals. She relied on ointments to soothe hemorrhoids that never seemed to go away, and wore a hernia belt for years, designed only for temporary relief, to get through a 40-hour work week. I remember watching her get ready for work, painfully pushing the hernia back in, strapping on the belt, and heading off day after day. At the time, I thought the physical demands of her job, along with 9 pregnancies, were to blame. And while they may have contributed, I've since learned that chronic straining during bowel movements is one of the most common causes. I also assumed the varicose veins were the result of childbirth. But in countries with even higher birth rates, varicose veins are far less common, showing that pregnancy alone can't explain them. Chronic straining plays a major role, increasing abdominal pressure, backing up blood flow in the veins around the anus, causing hemorrhoids, and even pushing blood into the legs, resulting in varicose veins. But a fiber-rich diet can relieve that pressure in both directions. My mom was deeply embarrassed by these conditions and carried a quiet shame. She rarely spoke about the pain and discomfort. She suppressed her feelings, letting them chip away at her happiness and self-worth. If she were alive today, she might want me to keep this private. But now, in her absence, I feel a responsibility to share her struggles in the hope of helping anyone in a similar situation avoid the suffering she endured. Because she wasn't alone. Surveys show that many adults in the U.S. struggling with chronic constipation have never discussed it with a healthcare provider. The taboo goes both ways. Doctors often overlook bowel function. Even people who think they're fine may actually be clinically constipated. Constipation is more than a minor inconvenience. It's the slow movement of unusually firm stool through the colon, leading to infrequent, difficult bowel movements. Expectations vary. Most people think daily movements are normal. But some doctors dismiss the problem entirely, saying it doesn't matter whether you go twice a day or 3 times a week. That's simply not true, and the consequences can be serious. Overall, the evidence points to a clear and consistent pattern. What we eat, how we live, and our metabolic health can significantly influence our colorectal cancer risk. So, how can we reduce our risk of colorectal cancer? The simplest and most effective place to start is by increasing fiber intake. Over the past century, fiber has quietly disappeared from the standard American diet. Too high in processed foods, excess protein, sugar, and fat, and too low in fiber from whole plant foods. Today, more than 95% of Americans don't get enough fiber, leaving a critical gap in one of the body's primary defenses against colon-related disease. In contrast, people in many developing countries eat 2 to 3 times more fiber, while most of our carbs come from sugar instead of fiber-rich whole grains, legumes, and tubers. Bringing fiber back, especially from whole plant foods, is one of the easiest and most powerful ways to support healthy digestion and protect your colon. There are 2 main types of fiber your body needs: soluble and insoluble, and each plays a different role. Soluble fiber dissolves in water and forms a gel. Think of it like a sponge. It helps soften stool, slow digestion, and regulate blood sugar and cholesterol. Insoluble fiber, on the other hand, adds bulk and structure. It helps move waste through the digestive tract, keeping things regular. Together, these fibers do more than just aid digestion. They slow the absorption of sugars, reducing stress on the pancreas, and in the colon, they interact with harmful substances in the stool, diluting and helping eliminate toxins and carcinogens before they can be absorbed. Most whole plant foods contain a mix of both, but getting enough of each is key to keeping your digestive system running smoothly. Experts recommend that 30 to 40 grams a day is ideal for reducing the risk of colorectal cancer. In fact, one study found that every 10-gram increase in daily fiber cut colorectal cancer risk by about 10%. But many people struggle to reach that goal, and it's easy to see why. Eating high-fiber foods draws water into the gut and feeds gut bacteria, which can cause bloating, gas, or cramping as your body adjusts. For anyone dealing with sensitive digestion or constipation, it can feel discouraging and overwhelming, making it tempting to skip whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes, even though these foods are essential for regular bowel movements, colon health, and disease prevention. You're not alone in this. Millions of people experience the same struggle. The good news is your body can adapt over time. By gradually adding fiber, you can reduce discomfort and give your gut a chance to adjust, unlocking the benefits of better digestion, regularity, and long-term colon health. A small step can make a big difference. Try adding 1 high-fiber food to every meal: oatmeal for breakfast, beans in your salad, or a piece of fruit with the skin left on as a snack. Swap white rice or bread for brown rice or whole grain versions, and make vegetables a part of every meal. Even just 5 extra grams of fiber a day, 1 more serving of a whole grain, vegetable, or fruit, can help keep your colon healthy and may lower your long-term risk of cancer. But fiber isn't the only thing found in whole plant foods that can protect your colon. Natural compounds called phytates, found in beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, are powerful cancer fighters. Even small amounts of beans, less than a quarter cup a day, can reduce the recurrence of precancerous colorectal polyps by up to 65%. Lab studies show that phytates target cancer cells directly, stopping their growth while leaving healthy cells unharmed. They also boost the immune system, starve tumors of their blood supply, and, in some cases, even help cancer cells return to normal. Even with these natural remedies, many people still struggle to keep their bowels regular. About 1 in 5 adults rely on laxatives or stool softeners just to get their bowels moving, and the number is even higher among older adults. Many also lean on coffee, a natural diuretic, to get things going. For years, my mom was a habitual coffee drinker, enjoying multiple cups a day. I think her reliance gave the illusion that her bowels were functioning normally. The truth is, without enough fiber and hydration, the colon can't stay healthy, no matter how much coffee you drink. The widespread use of laxatives is staggering. Over $300 million is spent annually in the US alone. Yet, despite hundreds of studies, the safety and effectiveness of these products, especially in older adults, remain uncertain. Common stool softeners like Colace often don't work, and stimulant laxatives like Senokot and Bisocodyl are only approved for short-term use. Long-term use, which is unfortunately common, can damage the nerves in the colon and disrupt normal bowel function. Beyond the colon, chronic laxative dependence can lead to serious health problems, including electrolyte imbalances that may cause confusion, seizures, or even heart rhythm disturbances like atrial fibrillation. I learned the risks of laxative dependence firsthand. In the final months of my mom's life, she relied on laxatives and stool softeners every day, afraid that she wouldn't be able to go naturally without them. It didn't help that doctors reassured her it was perfectly safe to take them daily if she hadn't had a bowel movement. Unfortunately, she trusted that advice. Less than a month after finishing cancer treatment, after chemotherapy and radiation had weakened her immune system, my mom suffered a violent seizure. Her muscles went rigid, her arms curled into her chest, her heart raced, her eyes glazed over. It was terrifying. We thought we were losing her. She was rushed to the hospital where she regained consciousness and had an EEG. The test ruled out epilepsy, and the neurologist couldn't explain what caused the seizure. Still, she was prescribed anti-seizure medication as a precaution and stayed in the hospital for several nights. A few days after she got home, her condition unraveled. She developed confusion, AFib, episodes of psychosis, multiple seizures. At the time, no one understood what was happening. Now I know that these complications were the result of her long-term dependence on laxatives and stool softeners. As painful as it was to watch my mom decline, I share this as a cautionary tale for anyone who may be relying on these medications to function. The safest, most effective approach is to address the root cause. Eat enough fiber, the body's first line of defense against constipation. And the best place to find it isn't in the supplement aisle. It's in the whole plant foods, especially from the produce, whole grain, and bulk bean sections. So what if you haven't reached the recommended screening age yet and are already experiencing symptoms like constipation, bloating, abdominal discomfort, nausea, or rectal bleeding? Or you have other red flag signals like unintentional weight loss, a family history of colorectal cancer, or inflammatory bowel disease. And what if you're simply proactive and want to make sure your digestive system is healthy? Fortunately, there are ways to assess how well your digestive system is functioning right from the comfort of your own home. Ideally, bowel movements should be regular, often around 2 to 3 times a day, and more importantly, effortless. The most telling sign of constipation isn't how often you go, but whether you have to strain. Many people with so-called normal bowel habits still experience urgency, straining, or a sense of incomplete defecation, leading researchers to label these patterns as normal. but they're only normal in the context of a low-fiber, standard American diet, not normal for our species. Defecation shouldn't be painful or forced. This is easy to see in populations eating fiber-rich, plant-based diets, where bowel movements are passed easily without straining. The body is designed to function this way. The rectum typically needs to fill to a certain volume, about 7 ounces, to trigger the natural urge to go. When that volume isn't reached, often due to low fiber intake and smaller stool bulk, the body compensates by straining, a defining feature of Western bowel habits. So the next time you go, notice not just the frequency, but the ease with each movement. In rural Africa and third world countries, where diets consist of minimally processed, starchy carbs, legumes, and root vegetables, adults typically pass 13 to 17 ounces of soft stool a day. In contrast, people eating the standard American diet pass less than 3 to 4 ounces of firm stool a day. Based on a study of 23 populations across a dozen countries, colon cancer rates appear to skyrocket as the average daily stool weight drops below about a half a pound. Populations producing a quarter pound a day have 3 times the rate of colon cancer. Even evidence from Paleolithic humans offers insight into what normal bowel habits may have looked like. Stools estimated to be over 100,000 years old were rehydrated and found to weigh about 8 ounces, roughly the same as the average stool passed by people in rural third world countries. This suggests that our distant ancestors likely had bowel patterns similar to rural African populations today, and that widespread constipation is a relatively modern phenomenon emerging in Western societies over the last century alongside a decline in dietary fiber. The bigger and more frequent your bowel movements are, the healthier you may be. So what's the best way to measure the weight of your stools? Using a simple bathroom scale. Just weigh yourself before and after you go, not the other way around. The link between colorectal cancer and stool size may be explained by intestinal transit time, the number of hours it takes for food to travel from mouth to toilet. The larger the stools, the more efficiently they move, resulting in shorter transit times. Many people don't realize that even with daily bowel movements, they can still be constipated. What gets flushed today may have been eaten a week ago. Transit time can vary depending on factors like dietary habits and gender, but fiber intake plays a crucial role. In rural third world countries, transit time averages about 1.5 days. In Western countries, it's typically around 3 days in young, healthy adults. And among the elderly, it can take 2 weeks or more. By global standards, Western populations are extremely constipated due to a lack of fiber. If you're curious about your own intestinal transit time, there's an easy test you can do at home. Eat a lot of beets and note when your stool turns pink. If it changes color within 24 to 36 hours, it usually means your digestive system is moving food efficiently, a good sign that you're getting enough fiber. There are 6 acceptable colorectal cancer screening strategies in the U.S. Starting at age 45, you can choose from the following: a colonoscopy, recommended every 10 years. Considered the gold standard of colorectal cancer screening, this procedure involves a doctor using a flexible camera to examine the entire colon and remove any polyps during the same exam. A stool-based test, recommended annually, a simple non-invasive at-home test that checks for microscopic blood in the stool, which could be an early sign of cancer. A stool DNA test, recommended every 1 to 3 years. Another non-invasive test, like Cologuard, that looks for abnormal DNA and blood in the stool associated with cancer and precancerous polyps. A virtual colonoscopy or CT colonography, a low-invasive imaging test using specialized CT scanners that creates 2D and 3D images of the colon and rectum to detect polyps or cancer. Flexible sigmoidoscopy, recommended every 5 years. Similar to a colonoscopy, this procedure only examines the lower part of the colon. A flexible sigmoidoscopy every 10 years combined with annual stool testing, a combined approach that uses both visual examination and stool-based screening. Another strategy to detect abnormal growth in the body that's rarely discussed is monitoring levels of IGF-1, or insulin-like growth factor 1, through a blood test. IGF-1 plays an important role in growth, especially during childhood. Levels are lowest in infancy and older age, and peak during puberty. It's produced primarily in the liver in response to a growth hormone and released in the bloodstream, where it can be measured as a marker of growth hormone activity. While IGF-1 levels typically decline in adulthood, elevated levels have been associated with cancer, including colorectal cancer. By monitoring IGF-1 levels through a blood test, you can get a better sense of what's happening beneath the surface, making it a useful tool for anyone focused on prevention or tracking disease progression. In the end, the best method of screening is the one you'll actually do. Screening is important, but preventing cancer in the first place is even better. While procedures like colonoscopies or sigmoidoscopies may prevent around 30% of colorectal cancer cases, up to 71% of cases could be prevented through diet and lifestyle changes alone. So, what if you're like me and you have a family history of colorectal cancer? Are you at greater risk of developing it yourself? Research over the past 20 years has examined how much our genes versus our lifestyle and environment contribute to chronic disease risk. The clear finding? Genes only account for a small part of the risk, about 10 to 30% for most common chronic diseases, including colorectal cancer. The majority of risk is shaped by lifestyle choices and environmental factors. Even though genetics play a smaller role, it's still important to be aware of your genetic predispositions. A great place to start is by constructing a family tree. This family tree highlights my closest deceased relatives on both sides of my family who died from health-related causes. Sadly, on my maternal side, I lost my mom, one of my aunts, and my grandfather to colorectal cancer, making it clear that my family has a higher risk of developing this disease. What I find especially interesting is that each of these relatives lived in the South and ate the standard American diet, but my mom alone was a smoker. She had smoked for more than 50 years. After her diagnosis, I remember thinking maybe her smoking habit caused her colorectal cancer. While it may have contributed, learning that my aunt and grandfather, who never smoked, also died from this disease made it clear that diet was the primary driver. I don't know exactly what my mom's family ate growing up, but I imagine it reflected many Southern staples: a lot of meat, fried foods, and rich traditions. And it makes me wonder how much of that carried over into my own life. Our plates look the same at every holiday, and we found comfort in the same familiar restaurants again and again. In order to get off of the conveyor belt that my mom was on, I realized that I had a choice to make, a dietary U-turn. That's why I'm taking this so seriously, and you should too. If you don't actively have a plan to not repeat history, you're doomed to repeat it. And what's more American than cancer? Many people will say, F cancer, but my motto is, F me if I'm not doing everything in my power to prevent it. So I encourage you, take the time to learn your family history, build a family tree to identify conditions that either run in your family or in your family's shared lifestyle, so you can better understand your risks and make informed choices today for your future. Speaking of choosing a different path, I want to introduce you to several colorectal cancer survivors who, when faced with a life-threatening diagnosis, chose an approach outside of conventional treatment. These stories aren't just inspiring, they're a wake-up call. For anyone who's watched a loved one face colorectal cancer, they offer something we all desperately need: hope. In 1976, at age 42, Reverend George Malcolmus was diagnosed with colon cancer. He had a baseball-sized tumor located between his transverse and descending colon. The year before, he lost his mother, who was a registered nurse, to colon cancer, despite following conventional medical treatment.
But as soon as she started the treatments, especially the chemotherapy, I saw Mother start to deteriorate and deteriorate quite rapidly until she died. So here I was faced with the same problem Mom had just died of. And one thing that's very difficult to do is to break programming. Because Mother, being a nurse, had always brought me up when you get sick, you go to the doctor, you do what he said. I had seen Mom do that. I saw the horrible consequences. And so I went looking for an alternative.
George radically changed his lifestyle, adopting a raw vegan diet inspired by Genesis 1:29. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food.
And in my search for an alternative way of dealing with my colon cancer, I was encouraged to talk to an evangelist in Texas by the name of Lester Roloff. Brother Roloff was a great gospel preaching man, but he was also considered a health nut in his day. He encouraged me not to go the medical route, but to do something as simple as change what I ate. Change what I ate from the standard traditional American diet of a meat-based, sugar dessert, pizza loving, used to be my favorite food, cooked food diet, to an all-raw diet with a lot of carrot juice. And so 25 years ago, overnight, I made the diet change. And within 1 year from the time I made the diet change, my baseball-sized tumor was gone without medical intervention. But not only was my cancer gone, so were all the other physical problems I was experiencing when I made the diet change. My hypoglycemia, my hemorrhoids, my severe allergies, my severe sinuses, my high blood pressure, my fatigue, my pimple outbreaks, even body odor and dandruff are gone in that first year. After 1 year on the total raw, I did modify my diet to include some cooked food again. Things like baked potato, brown rice, steamed vegetable, whole grain pasta, baked sweet potatoes, baked squash, and the like, no junk. And for the last 24 years, my diet's been about 85% raw, 15% cooked. And I'm still able to play almost any sport I played as a teenager and probably have more energy, endurance, and stamina than I had as a teen. So it's been a really interesting journey.
For the next 46 years, he continued his preaching ministry, sharing his testimony and coining the Hallelujah Diet, helping thousands reverse and prevent disease. George passed away in 2023 at the age of 89. I wonder at what age he would have passed away, or how his life might have been different had he not changed his lifestyle or followed the same treatment path as his mother. In 1991, at age 69, Mike Fremont was diagnosed with stage 3 colorectal cancer. His cancer had metastasized to 35 different sites across his lymphatic system. The Cleveland Clinic told him he had only 3 months to live if he didn't undergo surgery. After being inspired by a book his son gave him, The Cancer Prevention Diet by Michio Kushi, Mike adopted a vegan diet. Remarkably, the metastases not only stopped growing, they completely disappeared. He underwent surgery to remove the remaining mass and has now been cancer-free for over 30 years. Mike didn't just survive, though. He thrived. He has since set multiple world records in running, becoming the oldest person to finish a marathon at age 91. And at 99, he became the oldest participant in the National Canoe Championship.
No question in my mind. Absolutely, it is diet that has determined my existence, my continued existence, and my beautiful health.
Today, Mike Fremont is 104 years young. In July 2015, at age 49, Gigi Jones was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. Her doctor recommended immediate surgery, but she declined after being told that no lifestyle changes could possibly help the outcome of the surgery. Inspired by Dr. T. Colin Campbell's book, The China Study, Gigi made a dramatic shift to a raw vegan diet centered on living foods, emphasizing vegetables and sprouts. Within 6 months, her cancer disappeared without surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation, leaving her doctors astonished.
I'm going to get the surgery if I can't resolve this on my own in a year, right?
Correct. And then after that, I decided to go back and get retested. I went back, had a colonoscopy. doing the process. Then I wake up. Doctor is hovering over me saying, we see the dye where the cancer was, but where is it?
He's asking you?
Asking me.
What did you do with it?
I did nothing. He said, the dye is here. It was here. We have, I had to go out and get, a body scan and all that to see where the cancer was and all of that. And colonoscopy, they placed dyes where they were going to have to remove it from surgery. It wasn't there anymore.
Wow.
And so then they say, well, something had to happen. So we want you to come back every month so that we can check you out to make sure that they had no explanation. But I did. I knew what happened. But I couldn't truly tell them what happened because their ears were closed. They weren't ready to hear that food
Was all the medicine you need.
all the medicine I need because food is medicine. We know that.
Today, Gigi is the owner and operator of Gigi's Vegan and Wellness Cafe in Kansas City, where she helps her community embrace healthier lifestyles. In 2003, at just 26 years old, Chris Wark was diagnosed with stage 3C colon cancer. He underwent surgery to remove a third of his colon and a tumor the size of a golf ball. Because the cancer may have spread, doctors also removed 49 lymph nodes in total, 4 of which tested positive for cancer. When he was told he would need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy to prevent recurrence, Chris initially planned to follow doctor's orders. That is, until 2 experiences in the hospital began to shake his confidence in conventional medicine. He was served a sloppy Joe immediately following surgery, ground mystery meat stewed in ketchup and slopped onto a burger bun, a meal sorely lacking in nutrition that no restaurant would serve. When he asked the surgeon if there were any dietary restrictions he should follow while his intestines healed, the surgeon replied, "Nah, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer." Chris recalls, his dismissive joke and the terrible hospital food were my first indications that the medical establishment didn't place much emphasis on nutrition. After surgery, Chris made the controversial decision to forego chemotherapy, going against his doctor's advice. He has said that his choice was driven by a desire to heal his body rather than simply attack the cancer with toxic treatments. Inspired by the holistic hallelujah healing approach of Reverend George Malcolmus, Chris adopted a natural path to health. This included a plant-based, mostly raw, organic vegan diet, rich in nutrient-dense foods, particularly green smoothies.
A lot of people diagnosed with cancer want an easy fix. They want to check out, they want to abdicate any responsibility for their own health and delegate it to a doctor. Okay? Doctors aren't bad. I like what Bob said. Doctors have limited amount of tools in their toolkit, especially with cancer. Trauma care is the best it's ever been in the history of mankind. Trauma care is amazing. You get in a car wreck, you get a gunshot wound, somebody stabs you, go to the emergency room, there's a good chance they will save your life. But with cancer care, they have a very small little toolbox. They've got surgery, chemo, and radiation. That's it. There's no nutrition, there's no natural therapies. By the way, does anybody in here believe that in this entire world, that the only thing that can help you heal is a patented drug? Does anyone believe that? But yet, there are no natural therapies used in medicine. Not one. Every medicine prescribed by conventional doctors just so happens to be a patented pharmaceutical drug. It's a weird coincidence, really, if you think about it. So, when you step back and logically think about these things, it's like, wow, yeah, I don't believe that. I believe that everything my body needs probably comes from the earth, or maybe it just comes from the food I'm not eating. So, my decision was to overdose on nutrition. Instead of poisoning my body and hoping somehow if I poisoned it, I would get better. I don't understand how that happens. Some people live in spite of chemotherapy. Many don't. Everybody knows someone that's gone through chemotherapy and is alive, and that's great. most people don't live 5 years. Most cancer patients do not enjoy a long life if they go through conventional treatments. They live for a while, the cancer's gone for a little while, but it comes back. And they're treated again, and it's contained for a while, and it comes back. And that's because the underlying root cause of cancer was never addressed, right? Diet and lifestyle. Here's an interesting statistic. 70% of all premature deaths are from diet, poor diet, okay, lack of exercise, and tobacco. 70% of premature deaths from those three factors. That's poor diet, lack of exercise, and tobacco. The other 30%, homicide, suicide, and accidents. So if you don't think your diet and lifestyle matter, you're wrong. Your diet and lifestyle will either promote health or they're promoting disease. And the decisions you make today, you're either sowing the seeds of health. Any farmers in the room know what I'm talking about. You're sowing the seeds of health for tomorrow, or you're sowing the seeds of disease. And so the choices that I make today, I don't make them today because I don't want to eat a Whopper. I make them today because I want to be healthy tomorrow, right? I don't eat a Whopper today because I want to be healthy tomorrow.
If you've ever watched someone you love battle colorectal cancer, you know how powerless it can feel. These stories cut through that. They remind us there may be another path, and hope isn't lost. As my mom's caregiver, I witnessed firsthand the physical toll that chemotherapy and radiation took on her body. Watching her suffer and recognizing the limitations of conventional treatment profoundly changed my understanding of food as a powerful determinant of health, especially the relationship between diet and chronic disease. Nearly 4 years ago, I transitioned to a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Since then, I've dedicated myself to helping others access credible, evidence-based nutrition so they can make informed choices, feel empowered in their health, and hopefully avoid the kind of heartache my family and I endured. I did everything I could to support my mom. I prepared plant-based meals and encouraged her to make changes. Sometimes she seemed to understand the role nutrition plays, but changing a lifetime of habits, especially in the face of a cancer diagnosis, was incredibly difficult. Maybe it felt overwhelming, maybe it felt too late, but I believe as long as we have breath in our bodies, it's never too late to try. I'll never forget one of the last things she said to me, just 2 weeks before she took her final breath. I was sitting with her, feeding her a green smoothie, still holding on to hope that I could somehow help her heal. She had been drifting in and out of awareness for months and rarely spoke, but she paused, looked at me, and said, "I think it is about nutrition, B." And I broke. I said, "It is. It is, Mom. Keep drinking." I refused to let her death be in vain. Cancer may have taken her, but it didn't take my voice. And I won't wait for a diagnosis to take action. Don't fight for your life once you've been handed a death sentence. Don't wait for a wake-up call to start taking care of your health. Start now. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's this. Much of what we've talked about today is preventable, and change is always possible. My mom did begin to see that connection, but like so many people, she was navigating it late and under incredibly stressful circumstances. Now, we have the opportunity to act sooner. The choices we make every day, what we eat, how we live, shape our health in ways we don't see until it matters most. And while no one can control everything, we can take steps to lower our risk and protect the people we love, including ourselves. I share my mom's story not to scare you, but to empower you. Because if even one person catches something earlier, changes their habits, or asks more questions because of this video, then her story continues to make a difference. That's how I choose to honor her.